My name is Nellie Morgan. I'm 28 years old. And this is the story of how my family broke my heart, and how I took everything back. It was December 23rd, just before midnight, when I stepped off a delayed flight into a snow-draped Boise winter. The airport was quiet, save for the murmurs of tired travelers and the soft whirl of cleaning machines. I hadn't been home in nearly 2 years, not since I started working full-time as a pediatric nurse in Seattle. I was tired, yes, but also hopeful. All I wanted was to spend Christmas with my grandfather, Walter, the only man who'd ever made me feel safe in this world. The taxi pulled up to our old beige house, the one with the sagging shutters and the chipped porch I used to sit on every summer with Grandpa, snapping green beans into a bowl. Except tonight, it looked nothing like a home. No lights. No Christmas wreath. Just darkness swallowing the edges of the yard. I knocked twice. No answer. My breath fogged in front of me. I tried the handle. It opened. Cold air hit my face like a slap. Inside, it was freezing. The kind of cold that clung to your bones and made the walls feel like tombstones. I called out once. Nothing. Then I stepped into the kitchen and saw him. Grandpa Walter was hunched at the table, wearing a cardigan so thin you could see the shape of his spine through the fabric. His hands shook violently as he tried to lift a slice of dry sandwich. No dinner. No heat. No lights. Just him. Alone. And then I saw the note, a crumpled piece of paper taped to the fridge, fluttering from the weak draft coming in through a cracked window. I pulled it down. Read it. And felt my heart punch the floor. Used your money to cover Dylan. Watch Grandpa. Living it up in Cancun. Mom and Dad. At first, I couldn't breathe. Then I couldn't think. Then I just stood there, the room spinning around me like a cruel joke. My savings. 7 years of sacrificing every small joy, every new coat, every weekend brunch, all gone. For Dylan. And they didn't even have the decency to lie about it. They just left a note. They're going to regret this, Grandpa said hoarsely, placing his fragile hand on mine. His skin felt like paper, but his voice, that voice, was steady. I nodded slowly, jaw clenched. Yeah, Grandpa. This time, I won't stay quiet. 3 days before that moment, I had been working a double shift. My hospital kids had decorated the ward with glitter snowflakes and sticky paper stars. One of the mothers gave me a warm smile and a hug, whispering, "You're like an angel in scrubs." I smiled back, not knowing that in less than 72 hours, I'd be stepping into hell. That night, after I found Grandpa freezing and starving in his own home, I made him a warm drink with the only thing I could find, instant coffee packets and lukewarm tap water. We sat in silence. He tried to act like he was okay. I tried to act like I wasn't shattering inside. Have you eaten anything else since they left? I asked, gently. He gave a weak shrug. Some bread. Bit of cheese. Not much left. I opened the fridge. It was practically empty. A crusty jar of mayo. Half a ketchup bottle. A bag of wilted lettuce. My jaw tightened. Then came the second blow. Dylan said he'd pick up my meds. Yesterday. Grandpa's voice cracked. Took the car. Said he'd be right back. That was over 30 hours ago. I stormed into the hallway and checked every room. Dylan's old room was filled with trash, video game boxes, and designer sneakers still in the packaging. Pills scattered on the floor. A scale. Razor blades. Black zip bags. My stomach churned. This wasn't just a case of a struggling sibling. This was full-blown drug abuse. And my parents? They were sipping margaritas on a beach. I came back downstairs. Grandpa was slumped on the couch. I don't think Dylan's coming back tonight, I said quietly. I figured that out this morning, he replied with a hint of dry humor that made my eyes sting. Just then, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Baker, the neighbor who used to bring over lemon bars when I was in high school. She looked worried, her face pale in the porch light. Nellie? Thank God. Your grandfather's had a rough few days. I tried calling your mom, but no answer. And Dylan, well, the music was so loud, we had to call the police. Strangers coming and going at all hours. Has Dylan even been here? I asked. Not really. Just dropped in. But the house? It's been different. After she left, I sat down at the table, shaking. My phone buzzed. A bank alert. $2,400. Cancun Resort. 3 days ago. I gripped my phone so hard I thought it might crack. They didn't just steal from me. They abandoned the man who raised them. Left him to freeze. And gave no warning. No plan. No care. I reached for my laptop, opened the banking app, and looked through the transactions. $850. A spa. $3,200. Electronics. $1,700. Shoes. $4,875. Reimbursement. Initiated by Karen Mitchell. My own mother. Using my money. Without a word. I wanted to scream. But Grandpa needed me more than my rage did. I turned back to him. From now on, I'm handling everything. He nodded, no questions asked. That's how much he trusted me. That night, I started documenting. I created a folder. Mitchell Financial Abuse. Uploaded screenshots, photos, notes. I called my best friend Audrey, now a lawyer, and told her everything. I'll run a credit check, she said. Start gathering all evidence. This isn't just theft. This is elder neglect. Financial abuse. And maybe fraud. For the first time in years, I felt something burning in my chest that wasn't just pain. It was purpose. I would not let this continue. And my parents? They were about to find out what it means to betray the wrong daughter. The next morning, I was up before sunrise. I hadn't slept. I'd just been lying on the creaky living room couch, the blanket around me barely warding off the cold that had seeped into the walls. Grandpa snored softly in his recliner, still wrapped in that thin cardigan. In the gray morning light, he looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Like all the weight of survival had finally begun to sink into his bones. I got up, brewed coffee with the last of the grounds I found in a rusty tin, and opened my laptop. The Mitchell Financial Abuse folder now had 22 files. Screenshots of my bank transactions. Pictures of Grandpa's fridge, his prescriptions, Dylan's pill-strewn room. Emails confirming resort charges. I added more, scanned copies of his unpaid medical bills I found under a stack of old grocery flyers. I took pictures of every final notice envelope, every debt letter. If my parents wanted a war, they were going to face evidence. Not emotion. Facts. I sent Audrey a message. Me, just added more files. I need you to check if they've used my info for anything else. She replied in seconds. Audrey, running full ID trace. Hold tight. You're doing the right thing. After breakfast, if you could call a half-toasted bagel and a slice of American cheese breakfast, I sat across from Grandpa and gently asked, "Do you still have your retirement papers? The house deed?" He blinked, then slowly nodded. Yeah, in the metal box. Back of the closet. Your grandma used to keep it locked. I never changed that. Together, we pulled the dented silver lockbox from the closet. It was heavier than I expected. Inside, layer after layer of documents, some yellowed, some crisp. Tax forms. Utility bills. A few old photographs tucked between letters. And then, like a dagger, I found it. A withdrawal confirmation dated 2 years ago. $32,000. Labeled, Home Renovation Project. Authorized by Karen Mitchell. My mother. What is this? I asked, my voice tight. Grandpa rubbed his forehead. She said they needed the money to redo the kitchen. Promised they'd pay it back monthly. I looked up at the same old 1980s cabinets. The chipped counters. The oven with only one working burner. There's no renovation, Grandpa, I said. They used this money for something else. And they never paid it back. He looked ashamed, not angry, not confused. Just worn. Like he'd seen it coming but still hoped he was wrong. That hurt worse than any of it. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Audrey. I checked your credit report. Nellie, they co-signed 2 loans under your name. Small amounts, but still ongoing. One's with a payday lender, the other with a short-term credit app. $280 is being pulled from your account every month. What? I froze. How? You gave your mom access when you were 19, remember? You never removed her. She's been using your name and linked info. It's legal, barely, but still deceptive. I suggest we freeze all accounts and start building a legal case for financial coercion. I stared at the wall. Not even blinking. That sinking feeling? That was trust finally drowning. Later that evening, while sorting through Dylan's drawers, I found a crumpled flyer under his pillow. A re-enrollment notice from the local community college. Dated 4 months ago. Had he tried? Had he wanted something more? The thought stirred something in me, but it didn't excuse what came next. Because that night, the doorbell rang again. I opened it to find a scrawny kid in a hoodie holding a brown paper bag from the pet store. Riley Morgan, he asked, blinking. I stiffened. Yes. I'm Nathan. Dylan's friend. His mom asked me to feed the fish. Fish? He held up the bag. I peeked inside. No fish food. Just a sealed plastic container filled with brightly colored pouches. Drugs. Obviously. Hand me the bag, I said. I can't. Dylan already paid. Plus, Karen said. She's in Cancun, I snapped. And you have 3 seconds to get off my porch or I'm calling the police. He scoffed. I'll tell Dylan you ruined everything. Then he threw the bag at my feet and sprinted back to his rusted car. I dumped it in the outside trash. But that wasn't what made my hands shake. It was the realization that Dylan had turned Grandpa's house into a drop spot. This wasn't just spiraling. This was destruction. When I walked back in, Grandpa was still in his chair, unmoved. He looked at me and simply said, "He's been coming for 3 nights now. Every night, someone knocks." I nodded, my throat tightening. I knew what I had to do next. The next morning, I drove straight to the Pine Hill neighborhood. Dylan's latest Instagram tag had him lounging at some party house there just hours earlier. I called the property owner pretending to be his sister looking for a missing family member. She said he'd left the day before. Never came back. I knew where this was heading. Knew that soon I'd find him half dead or missing. I sent Audrey a quick message. Me, if I don't call back in 30, call the cops. Then I drove. Straight to a rental property with too many parked cars and music still thumping through its walls. I found him upstairs. Sprawled on the floor, clutching an empty beer can, his mouth barely moving. "Dylan," I whispered, kneeling beside him. He didn't move. "Dylan." I shook his shoulder hard. Finally, his eyelids fluttered. "Riley," he muttered, confused. "We're going home," I said. "Now." Dragging him to the car took everything I had. But when we got back, when I sat him at the kitchen table and dropped the bank statements in front of him, I didn't raise my voice. I looked him dead in the eyes. This was my future. 7 years of savings. Gone. He didn't argue. Just stared at the page. And Grandpa? He survived on ketchup and dry bread while you bought pills and Yeezys. Still, no excuse. But then, something cracked in his voice. I don't know how to be better, Nellie, he whispered. I don't know how to live if I'm not like this. It's the only thing that makes the emptiness go away. Just for a second. I didn't respond at first. I just sat there, watching my brother fall apart in real time. Then I whispered, you don't have to be like me. You just have to live. Really live. And then he asked me a question I'll never forget. If I try to change, will you stay? I didn't hesitate. Yes. Because I was done saving everyone. But if he wanted to save himself, I'd be the first one to show up. The next morning, sunlight leaked through the torn blinds, casting faded stripes on the living room floor. Grandpa was already awake, sitting quietly at the table, flipping through an old medication guide. Dylan lay curled up on the couch, his breathing slow but steady, a pale ghost of the boy he used to be. I poured coffee and sat next to Grandpa. He looked at me with tired, sunken eyes. It's time, Nellie, he said quietly. Time to do what they wouldn't. I nodded. I already had the plan. First, I called Audrey. We were moving ahead with full legal guardianship over Grandpa's medical and financial rights. She had drawn up all the necessary documents. I placed them on the table in front of him. This gives me the power to protect you, I said. To stop them from taking another dollar. To make sure you never end up in that freezing kitchen again. He didn't hesitate. His signature shook, but his gaze was steady. I scanned the signed forms and emailed them to Audrey. Valid, she confirmed within minutes. Now we freeze assets, notify the financial institutions, and prepare for any challenge from your parents. Then came the next step. I called Rachel. Rachel and I had gone to community college together. She left nursing for real estate, but we'd stayed in touch over the years. She was sharp, fast, and had a way of cutting through nonsense like a blade through silk. I need to sell the house, I told her. There was silence on the other end. Then, a quiet, Nellie, are you sure? I'm not trying to preserve a memory, I said. I'm trying to save what's left of my grandfather's life. Understood. I'll pull an internal market review and get a private listing going. We can close fast, maybe within the month. After hanging up, I turned to Grandpa. We're moving you closer to me. There's a facility in Seattle, Springwood Haven. Not a hospital. It has a garden, independent units, physical therapy, and no bleach smell. He gave a half smile. I can live without the bleach. We laughed, a weak but real sound. The first genuine one in days. Later that afternoon, Dylan shuffled into the kitchen. His hair was a mess, his skin pale and slick with sweat. Withdrawal was setting in. I looked up Riverbend, he said quietly, sitting down. The place you mentioned. Looks real. It is. And it's not a lock-you-up type? No. It's treatment. With people who listen. And work with you. You're not being thrown away, Dylan. You're being given a way out. He hesitated. When? Monday. 3 days from now. I've already reserved a spot. He looked down at his hands. And if I fail? Then you try again. But you won't be alone. That was the moment. The first true flicker of choice in his eyes. Not desperation, not manipulation. Just raw, quiet willingness. We spent the rest of the day reviewing what he needed: clothes, documents, medical evaluations. I scheduled an appointment with a psychologist for Friday, the required intake process. Dylan didn't resist. He packed his own bag. That night, as I washed dishes with Grandpa, he said something that stopped me cold. "You've become the woman your mother never dared to be." I didn't reply. I couldn't. I just looked at him, grateful that at least one person had always seen me clearly. The next day, I printed every document, bank statements, forged loan applications, pictures of the empty kitchen, the drug-laced bedroom. Every record of elder neglect. I filled out the state's elder financial abuse report and submitted it under my legal role as Grandpa's guardian. Then came the knock at the door. I opened it to find Karen Mitchell. My mother. She stood there in designer sandals, tanned skin glowing, vacation curls bouncing in the sunlight. Beside her was my father, Thomas, still wearing a white polo and aviators perched on his head. "What's going on?" she asked, already pushing past me. "We just got back." "Your text sounded dramatic." Dylan stepped out of the hallway behind me. "Dylan nearly died," I said flatly. "He overdosed on a combination of Grandpa's meds and whatever garbage he's been buying. He's going to rehab." My father rolled his eyes. "Come on. It's not the first time he's had a bad reaction." I pulled a folder from my coat and dropped it on the table. Blood tests. Receipts. Doctor's notes. All in black and white. "And Grandpa? You left him here to rot." "Excuse me?" Mom snapped. "We left food." "You left ketchup, Mom. And dry bread. In a house with no heat. No meds. No calls answered. Not even for Christmas." Her face turned from shock to fury. "How dare you stand there, Anne?" I cut her off. "I have power of attorney now. Grandpa gave me full control of medical and financial decisions. Your access is revoked. Permanently." She laughed, the brittle kind. "That won't hold in court." "It already does," I said. Signed. Witnessed. Certified. I've filed the abuse report. And Rachel's putting the house on the market. Effective this week. My father stepped forward. "You're bulldozing your own family. That house is our legacy." "No," I said calmly. "That house was a prison. And I'm setting all of us free, especially Grandpa." Karen's eyes burned holes through me, but I didn't back down. "Not this time. And as for the money you stole?" I pulled out one more document. Audrey drafted a repayment plan. "You're selling the vacation cabin, the one you bought with my college fund. That'll cover the first half." They both froze. "Don't worry," I added. "I didn't press charges. But if I see one missed payment, one forged document, one unauthorized withdrawal, I won't hesitate again." Mom opened her mouth. But behind me, Dylan spoke. "Don't," he said softly. "Just don't pretend anymore. Please." She froze in place. And for the first time, I saw it. Not guilt. Not regret. Loss. She was losing control. Losing the narrative. And I wasn't giving it back. They didn't say a word after that. My mother's expression stayed frozen, like someone trying to smile in a photo long after the flash has gone off. My father's fists clenched at his sides, not out of rage, but the helpless frustration of a man who'd finally been cornered with the truth. I watched them both, standing in the kitchen I once scrubbed clean as a child while they fought in the next room. The kitchen I had cried in when Grandpa first taught me how to make scrambled eggs the real way. Now, the same space bore witness to a reckoning decades overdue. Dylan stayed silent through the confrontation. He didn't argue. Didn't flinch. Just leaned against the wall, eyes down, arms crossed. But something in his posture had changed. He wasn't trying to disappear anymore. He was bracing himself for the next step. After they left, the air felt cleaner. I sat on the couch beside Grandpa, who was rubbing his knuckles like he always did when nervous. I placed the signed guardianship documents between us and said quietly, "It's official. They have no more access." He nodded slowly. "I always hoped your mom would turn around. But sometimes, love blinds you." I looked at him, this man who had worked in steel factories, raised a daughter alone after my grandmother died, and still chose to see the good in people who forgot him the second they didn't need his sacrifice anymore. "They're going to hate me for this," I whispered. Grandpa chuckled. "Good. Sometimes, hate means you've finally drawn a line." That night, I submitted every official document to the proper institutions, credit bureaus, banks, utility companies, even the city's elder care agency. I wanted everything recorded. No more back doors. No more manipulation disguised as help. Dylan came into the kitchen while I was on the phone with Springwood Haven. I motioned for him to sit, and he did, slowly, like his legs had forgotten how to rest. "I looked at the program again," he murmured. "Riverbend. And? I want to go," he said. A pause. "But I'm scared I won't come back the same." I reached across the table and placed my hand on his. "That's the point." He looked up at me, the glimmer of a sad smile twitching at his lips. "You're still staying, right? Through this?" "Through everything," I said. The next day, I drove Dylan to Riverbend. It was nestled on the outskirts of town, surrounded by pines and low fog. The kind of place that looked too peaceful to be a recovery center, and yet, that's exactly what it was. No white walls. No metal beds. Just warmth. Quiet rooms. Staff that spoke gently. He checked in without resistance. I filled out the forms. Signed the papers. The intake coordinator gave him a schedule, a counselor's name, and a private room key. Before I left, Dylan turned and said, "I want to make it to the end. This time." And for the first time in years, I believed him. Back home, I helped Grandpa pack for his move to Seattle. I'd already toured Springwood Haven virtually. He would have his own room, a balcony that overlooked a maple tree grove, and daily physical therapy sessions. There was even a chess club he could join. He lit up at the thought. Rachel visited the house the following day. She walked through slowly, clipboard in hand, documenting the damage and assessing market value. "We'll list it privately," she said. "No need to draw public attention. But with this neighborhood, we can move fast." I stood in the living room, staring at the faded photos still on the mantel, baby pictures of me and Dylan, old Polaroids of my mom holding a birthday cake, Grandpa laughing in the background. Funny how photographs could lie. "I'll leave it all behind," I said aloud. "Let them keep the frames. The memories are mine anyway." Rachel paused, then nodded. "You're doing the right thing, Nellie. This isn't erasing your past. It's protecting your future." Later that evening, I received a call from Audrey. "We need to meet," she said. "In person. Bring your documentation." I met her at a quiet law office downtown, where she laid out a thick file in front of me. "The evidence is overwhelming. But if you want them to take you seriously, we need to deliver one final blow, a binding agreement." "You mean, force repayment?" "And full relinquishment of any claim to Grandpa's assets," she said. "Everything. The house. The insurance. The retirement funds. Otherwise, once he's in care, they might try to come back. And with Dylan away, they'll aim for you." I stared at the folder. The weight of it. The truth. "I want to do it," I said. "I want it in writing." That weekend, we called a family mediation. My mother and father arrived tense, expecting a fight. Instead, they were handed contracts. A repayment plan. A forfeiture of all financial claims. Karen tried to protest. "This is cruel. were still his children. But Grandpa, sitting quietly at the end of the table, said, "No. You stopped being his children when you left me in a cold house with no food, no medicine, and no love." They signed. Each page was a nail sealing the coffin of their control. When they left, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. 2 days later, I stood outside Riverbend, waiting for Dylan's group session to end. He walked out slowly, a bit thinner, eyes clearer. He didn't say much. Just hugged me. "I'm learning to be okay with being broken," he said into my shoulder. "Because broken doesn't mean useless. Just healing." I pulled back and smiled. "That's all we ever needed from you, Dylan. Just try." 3 weeks after Dylan began treatment, Grandpa and I stood outside the doors of Springwood Haven. It was a cool, overcast morning in Seattle. Mist clung to the edges of the trees lining the property, and a soft breeze lifted the scent of pine and earth. Grandpa leaned on my arm as we walked inside. The front lobby looked more like a cozy bed and breakfast than a care facility: wooden beams, soft lighting, a fireplace crackling in the corner. A nurse named Jamie greeted us with a warm smile. "Mr. Walter Morgan, welcome home." Grandpa looked up at her and said, "Well, as long as it doesn't smell like a hospital, I guess I can get used to it." She chuckled and led us down the hallway toward his room. It was small, clean, and filled with light. A window opened out to a garden courtyard where raised flower beds sat in neat rows. There were even a few rocking chairs. "I thought you said this place had a vegetable garden," he said, pointing to a tomato vine. I nodded. "And you're going to help them manage it. Don't think you're getting out of pulling weeds." He grinned, settling into his chair by the window. "Only if you bring donuts on Sundays." I agreed, and when I left that afternoon, I kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're safe now. I promise." Back at my apartment, I opened my laptop and checked the private cloud folder, Mitchell Financial Abuse. It had grown to over 80 documents now. Bank statements, credit reports, notarized contracts, rehab agreements, and now, receipts for Grandpa's new residence, paid in full, using funds legally transferred from the house sale. Everything was clean. Official. Locked in. And I was no longer carrying it alone. Audrey had submitted the formal fraud notification to the credit bureau on my behalf. Within a week, I received a letter confirming the unauthorized loans had been flagged. I was no longer liable for the $11,000 my parents had tied to my name. Later that night, as I scrolled through my phone, I saw something that made my stomach twist. A Facebook post. Karen Mitchell. Smiling in a group photo at a women's charity gala. The caption read, "Always giving back. Family first, always. 2 hearts #grateful heart #blessed life." I stared at the image. Polished, posed, perfect, a carefully cultivated lie for the outside world. But I didn't comment. I didn't message. I didn't rage. I just took a screenshot and filed it in the folder. Because sometimes silence speaks louder than rage. Because sometimes receipts speak louder than stories. 2 months passed. Spring crept slowly into Seattle. Grandpa thrived. His physical therapy sessions improved his mobility, and he even joined the weekly gardening group. His favorite seat in the library became his morning perch. He'd sit there with a crossword puzzle and a mug of cocoa, content in a way I hadn't seen in years. And Dylan? Dylan was surviving. Really surviving. Riverbend wasn't easy on him. The early weeks were rough. I got 2 calls about panic attacks and one about a medication adjustment. But he stayed. And then, slowly, he started sending me voice messages. Just walked through my first group therapy without shutting down. I painted today. It was weirdly calming. I had a dream last night that I was standing in a grocery store and didn't feel like running away. They were small victories. But they were his. Then one morning, I got a video. Dylan, standing in a community kitchen, holding a ladle. Making spaghetti. For real this time. Not microwave junk. Thought you'd be proud. He turned the camera to show a large pot of bubbling sauce. Steam fogged the lens. He laughed. A real, unfiltered laugh. I cried at my kitchen table. That night, I called Grandpa. Told him about the video. Spaghetti, he asked. He's never even boiled water. He's trying, Grandpa. He was quiet for a moment. Then, maybe he just needed someone to say, it's okay to be broken and still be loved. 2 weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. A thick envelope with my name in elegant script. Inside, a legal notice confirming that the house had officially sold. The funds had been divided as per the terms I submitted. A portion placed in Grandpa's care trust. Another in a separate savings account for Dylan's long-term outpatient treatment. And the rest? It went into a brand new bank account under my name. Fully secured. No shared access. No old signatures. I stared at the balance. $42,611.73. The first clean money I'd seen in years. Not stolen. Not drained. Not tainted by guilt. Mine. A week later, I visited Grandpa with a grocery bag full of pastries and a new crossword book. He was sitting with a friend in the courtyard, telling a story about the time he fixed an entire water heater using nothing but duct tape and rage. I handed him his favorite almond Danish. You're spoiling me, he said, eyes twinkling. You spoiled me first, I replied. As he ate, I told him about my new plan. I want to apply for the pediatric trauma program, I said. It's at the university hospital. Competitive. Brutal hours. But I think I'm ready. He didn't hesitate. You've spent your whole life saving everyone else. Maybe now's the time you save yourself by doing what you were born to do. I leaned down and hugged him. I love you. I know, he said. But I like hearing it anyway. That night, I drafted a letter. Not to my parents, but to myself. Dear Nellie. You are not broken. You are not selfish. You are not cold for walking away. You are allowed to choose peace over chaos. Truth over denial. Yourself over those who only take. You are allowed to start again. The following Monday, I stood outside Riverbend again, heart pounding harder than I cared to admit. 3 months had passed since I dropped Dylan off at those gates, unsure if I'd ever see the version of him I used to know. Or if he even wanted to come back from the place he'd sunk into. But that morning, the doors opened, and out walked my brother. Not polished. Not perfect. But present. He carried a small duffel bag and wore a simple gray hoodie. His face was thinner. Beard trimmed. Eyes clearer. He didn't look fixed, he looked honest. And that, I realized, was more than enough. You look, I started. He raised an eyebrow. Like someone who hasn't seen a mirror in 3 months? I laughed. No. You look like someone I actually recognize. We hugged. Not the stiff, awkward kind. But the real kind. The kind where someone finally lets go of the weight on their back, if only for a moment. The car ride home was quiet, save for the rain pattering softly on the windshield. Halfway through the drive, Dylan spoke. I'm not gonna pretend I'm cured. Or that I've figured everything out. You don't have to. But I want to cook dinner. For you. For Grandpa. Like, a real meal. From scratch. I turned and smiled. As long as you promise not to burn the house down. No promises, he said. But I'll try. That evening, we gathered around my small kitchen table, Grandpa in his favorite sweater, Dylan slicing tomatoes like they might explode, and me watching like a proud parent at a school play. He made spaghetti again, this time with garlic bread, a salad, and meatballs he nearly forgot in the oven. It wasn't perfect. The pasta was slightly overcooked. The bread too crunchy. But it was ours. We laughed. We talked. We cleaned up together. And after Grandpa went to bed, Dylan and I sat outside on the balcony, wrapped in blankets, sipping hot tea. "You ever think we'd get here?" he asked. "I didn't think we'd survive the last 3 months." He nodded. "I still hear their voices sometimes. Moms. Dads. Telling me I'm a screw-up. That I need to grow up or get out." "Then let them talk," I said. "They've talked enough for a lifetime." He turned to me. "I'm not ready to forgive them. Maybe I never will." "You don't have to," I replied. "Forgiveness isn't a requirement for healing." Then I told him something I hadn't said out loud before. I used to think if I was good enough, quiet enough, gave enough, they'd eventually see me. Thank me. Maybe even love me in the way I needed. Dylan didn't interrupt. He let me finish. But they didn't. And now I understand why. Some people can only love in ways that break others. He exhaled slowly. And we just kept bleeding for it. Not anymore. We sat in silence, the city lights glowing in the distance. And then he asked, "Do you still have the folder? The one with everything?" "Every document," I said. "Every receipt. Every signature." "What are you going to do with it?" I looked down at my mug. "I don't know. Part of me wants to burn it. Another part wants to send it to a lawyer and never look back. Or," he said gently, "you could keep it. Not for revenge. But to remind yourself what you survived." 2 weeks later, I received an official letter from the Idaho Office of Elder Protection. The investigation into my parents had concluded. Due to the notarized evidence I submitted, including documented neglect, financial exploitation, and misuse of medical responsibilities, they were issued a formal legal warning, barred from accessing Walter Morgan's medical or financial information, and restricted from initiating contact without third-party mediation. The final line read, "Due to the volume and clarity of documented misconduct, this office affirms Nellie Morgan's continued guardianship over Walter Morgan. No further action is required unless contact is breached." I forwarded the letter to Audrey. She responded with just 2 words. "You won." But I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt still. For the first time in years. Dylan started outpatient therapy that same month. 3 days a week. Morning group sessions. Weekly one-on-ones. He got a job at a local pet store, part-time, but stable. He brought home little stories about an old man who only bought cat food for raccoons and a kid who insisted on naming every fish Greg. He even started writing, not for anyone else, but just for himself. One night, he handed me a folded piece of paper. I opened it. A list. People I blamed for everything. 1. Mom. 2. Dad. 3. You. 4. Myself. "I wanted you to read it," he said, "so you'd know I'm not hiding anymore." I looked up. "You don't have to explain, Dylan." He shook his head. "I want to." Then, in early June, something unexpected happened. I received a letter in the mail from a firm I didn't recognize. I opened it cautiously, expecting another debt, another surprise. But it wasn't. Inside was a check. $5,000. Memo line, partial repayment from Karen and Thomas Mitchell, case settlement #8421C. No note. No explanation. Just cold ink and legal obligation. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deposited it. Not because I wanted their money. But because I'd earned every damn cent of it. I used a portion to pay off the last of Grandpa's previous medical debt. And the rest? I bought a piano. For Dylan. A used upright Yamaha, with a slightly chipped pedal and a sound that filled our apartment with something we hadn't heard in years. Music. Real music. That night, as Dylan played a slow, uneven rendition of Lean on Me, Grandpa dozed on the recliner, and I sat curled on the floor, sipping tea. This was it. The life we built. Not perfect. Not healed. But true. And finally, ours. Summer arrived slowly that year, as if even the season was learning how to breathe again. The days stretched longer, the sunlight softer. Grandpa's hair had grown whiter, but his laughter had grown louder. Dylan's arms no longer trembled from withdrawal, they now carried grocery bags and books from the library. And me? I no longer woke up at 3 a.m. clutching my phone, waiting for another emergency. We had built something. Not a fairy tale. But a life. One afternoon in late July, I came home to find Dylan sitting at the kitchen table with Grandpa, both of them bent over a large notebook. Grandpa had his glasses perched on the tip of his nose, and Dylan was drawing what looked like a menu. "What are you two up to?" I asked. Grandpa looked up with a sheepish grin. "We're planning a dinner." Dylan nodded. "I want to make something special. For the three of us. No more spaghetti." He turned the notebook around. Written in careful block letters. The Morgan family meal. Appetizer, caprese salad. Main, herb-crusted salmon with roasted garlic mashed potatoes. Dessert, Grandpa's favorite, apple pie, extra cinnamon. Drink, sparkling apple cider. No phones. No fights. Just food and forgiveness. I blinked hard. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Dylan said. "And I want to do all of it myself. One meal. One night. As a thank you." I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. "Let's do it." The night of the dinner was perfect. The table was set with a tablecloth we borrowed from Springwood Haven's event closet. Dylan wore a button-down shirt, wrinkled but tucked in. Grandpa had even slicked back his hair with a comb and dabbed on cologne that hadn't been used in at least a decade. I sat down and smiled. Dylan brought out the salad first, then the main course, slightly overcooked salmon, but tender. And finally, the apple pie. Burned around the edges. But smelling exactly like forgiveness. When we were done eating, Grandpa raised his glass. "To Nellie," he said. "The woman who reminded this family that love without action is just noise." I shook my head, smiling. "To both of you. For choosing something harder than survival. You chose change." We clinked glasses. Later, Dylan sat at the piano and played. A song he wrote himself. No lyrics. Just slow, thoughtful chords, each one feeling like an apology and a promise wrapped into sound. That night, as we cleaned up together, Dylan turned to me. "Do you think we'll ever be a real family again?" I paused. Then said quietly, "I think we already are. Just a different kind." He nodded. "I can live with that." Weeks passed. Grandpa settled into his new rhythm, physical therapy twice a week, weekly chess tournaments, and an ongoing rivalry with a 78-year-old named Margaret over who could finish a crossword fastest. Dylan kept attending outpatient therapy. He eventually started volunteering at Riverbend, helping new patients adjust. He called it paying rent to the universe. Me? I got the call. Accepted into the pediatric trauma program. I stood in the middle of my apartment, holding the letter, hand shaking. I'd spent so long surviving, I had almost forgotten how to build something for myself. But now? I was going to start. One Sunday morning, as Grandpa and I sat in the community garden, he handed me a small envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Something I've been saving. For a long time." Inside was a faded photo of my grandmother. She was standing in front of the same house we just sold, holding a baby, me, wrapped in a pink blanket. "She would be proud of you," he said. "You broke the chain." I looked at the picture. "I just did what you taught me." "No," he said. "You did what none of us dared. You spoke the truth." 3 months later, I stood in a courtroom. Not as a defendant. Not as a victim. But as a legal witness. Audrey had asked me to testify in a case involving financial abuse of a senior citizen. A woman named June, 81 years old, whose son had drained her bank account and left her in debt. "I know it's hard to speak up," I said on the stand. "But silence won't save you. It only keeps you trapped. And there is life and light after letting go." When I stepped down, June's daughter hugged me in the hallway, eyes full of tears. "You gave us courage." "No," I thought. "That's just what truth does, when you finally let it speak." That night, I sat on my balcony with Dylan and Grandpa, looking out over the lights of the city. "We should write it all down," Dylan said. "Our story. Who'd want to read it?" I joked. "Someone who's still stuck. Someone waiting for permission to speak." I looked over at him. Not a boy anymore. Not a screw-up. But a man, reshaped by pain, made real by the choice to try. And I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Let's tell the truth. Let's tell all of it." This is the story of how I came home to a frozen house, a starving grandfather, and a note that tried to break me. But it didn't. It lit the fire I needed to reclaim everything: dignity, protection, and peace. If you've ever been used by the people who were supposed to love you. If you've ever sacrificed everything and been left with nothing. I want you to know. You're not alone. And your silence is not required. Speak. Protect what matters. And choose peace, even if you have to fight for it. What do you think of Nellie's journey? Would you have made the same decisions? Or done something differently? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, follow Revenge Echoes for more powerful, true-to-life tales where truth wins even when it hurts.